guys, it's Sam, and this is my birthday Q&A. Today, as this video is going up, it is my birthday. Thank you to everyone wishing me happy birthday in the comments, as I know you're going to. But this month, my Patreon supporters voted for this month's video to be a Q&A. Every month, my Patreon supporters get to vote in a poll for video topics that I'll do, for books that I'll read. We have a Discord group, we have a buddy read that we do for the book that gets picked, a lot of stuff. So I will link my Patreon on the screen if you're interested. Also, you may be able to notice that I got my camera back, so things are back to how they used to be. Bless. I know some of you really liked the look of my phone that I was shooting on for the last couple of videos, but it was a pain in the butt to do, so I'm sorry. I actually prefer the cooler look that this gives, and because this is actually the look, like, this is my skin tone, where the oranginess was not. But I know some of you like warm cottagecore vibes, so sorry, but this is how it's gonna stay because it's more true to actual colors. Also, I wanted to let you guys know that this month I am working with the app Bookshelf. Bookshelf is a free app that's available at bookshelf.com or in the App Store, and it is one place to save and organize all of your digital content from different places. Articles, Instagram posts, Pinterest, whatever. Instead of having to check all the different apps, you can compile all the stuff on one topic in one app. So users can create collections and put different things on that topic in each shelf, like a bookshelf. This is a budding social community where you can follow different creators and your friends and things and learn more from their different shelves and collections. Bookshelf feels that humans share better than algorithms because, as you guys know, algorithms sometimes are not great at showing you what you actually want to see. And it's really simple and easy to use. And this month I've already been putting together collections on topics that I know you guys want to hear more about from me, but it's hard to kind of compile it all together, so Bookshelf is the perfect place to do that. So one is series that I plan to continue because you guys ask about that a lot now that my TBR is getting down to a minimum. I also have a whole collection of like woo-woo witchy content, which I will get to in the Q&A because you guys did ask some questions about it. So that is also one place where I talk about all of that stuff from all the different platforms that I follow that kind of content on to share with you guys. And then also my favorite podcast, because that gets asked a lot as well. So I would love if you followed me on Bookshelf at Thoughts on Tomes, and I'll be checking out your guys' content as well. So now on to the questions. I'm first going to answer questions from my Patreon Discord. And I'm not going to do usernames in case people don't want me to, so that just cuts that out. First question is, if you could have any mentor from a book teach you, who would you choose? This was hard to narrow down, and I actually don't want to narrow it down because I'm going to make a whole video on this topic. The first one that came to mind is Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter, written by Emma Watson, just because she is that perfect teacher. There's also a lot of different teachers from different books that I'm going to mention in my other video that are like, they're not warm people, right? But their mentor character I just love so much. So this was like, McGonagall was probably like the best for like, yes, she would be a loving soul, stern, yet warm. I like it. But there's a lot of other ones in there, in my list that I have, that are like, ooh, these people would be harsh, but I love it. If you could completely forget a book and choose it for the first time again, what would you choose? The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Duh. This will be the answer to a lot of things, as it always is, but the experience that I had reading this was so magical, and I would love to just like be immersed in it again, not knowing. It'd be great. What plant are you dreaming of getting once you have your own place? There's nothing that I'm waiting specifically for having my own place, really. I think there might be some like, maybe like a gloriosum. I'll put a picture up here. That they're big. And I like them. They're very big. But yeah, I'm up to 30 plants. I actually bought 3 plants today as of filming this video, so I'm up to 30 plants. So I'm not really like waiting. Part of me is also like, don't buy too many plants because I don't know what kind of light conditions I'll have at my new place. But I'm also like, I'm not going to put off happiness in the year 2020, so I'm still buying plants. And I'm going to continue to do that. Could you talk a bit about your new job and how much you're enjoying it without revealing too much, of course? So if you haven't seen me talk about it like very briefly on Instagram and Twitter, I did start a new job the very end of July, and so now I'm officially a therapist. So I work in a private group practice, which is cool. So there's a group of other therapists and we all kind of support each other, but we also do our own thing, and yeah, I love it. So I'm doing that, and we are all doing telehealth right now. So everything is work from home, and it will be until everything is completely safe. Our boss is really cool, and she shut everything down like within days of the stay-at-home order being placed in Illinois, and she's keeping it that way. Even though the stay-at-home order is being lifted in Illinois for right now, she's like, basically we're not going back to offices until there's a vaccine. Thanks, bye. So it's worked out really well because I'm still living at my parents' place, which is about an hour and a half away from the offices that I'd have to commute to if I had to commute. So it gives me time to like get my own place slowly, find a place I love and not feel rushed because I'm hating the commute. I can do everything from home and then office. Actually, my office is set up down here, so that's why my books are turned around on those shelves, because clients can see them when I'm sitting down. It's the whole thing. I'm multitasking with this space. But yeah, I love it. I really like all the clients that I have so far. I'm quickly getting them, which is really nice. And I've also networked with some cancer clinics in the area because, as you guys know, oncology is my specialty. So I want to work with individuals with cancer or who have had cancer or their loved ones. So that's what I'm forming my niche around. But yeah, it's been my ideal job. I've always wanted to do it, and now I'm doing it, and I plan to do this like forever, maybe. We'll see. If you had to purge all but 5 of your owned books, which ones would you keep? I would keep The Night Circus, my original one that I first read. I would keep my special edition of The Lies of Locke Lamora, which Whitney from Witty Novels got me years ago. It's beautiful. I would keep The Winter of the Witch because it's my favorite. Siege and Storm because this is the original covers and it's my favorite of the Grisha trilogy. And the special edition I just got of The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern because it's beautiful and it was special edition and Sarah Jane ordered it for me in the UK and sent it over to me. Like, this has sentimental value to me. So yeah, 2 Erin Morgenstern books. Or only 2 books. Not shocked. What book would you consider your biggest surprise? Either you had low expectations or no expectations. So biggest surprise in a good way. That's hard. I think it would be Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Even though this was incredibly hyped and I was pretty sure I was going to like it, by this time I had read a few books by her that I didn't like because, as many of you know, I have a very fraught relationship with V.E. Schwab's books. So while this book isn't perfect, I really loved it. It was 5 stars for me. It has its problems, obviously, but I did adore it, and it's a standalone in my head. Ooh, also, I just remembered The Amberlow Dossier by Laura Elena Donnelly. This series like blew me away and I went in with like low-ish expectations because no one talks about it, but it's wonderful. Okay, now I'm going to Instagram. Ooh, this is a interesting one. What songs have you had on repeat during quarantine? I will tell you by pulling up my Spotify. There's been a lot of different phases of quarantine, I will say, so it's kind of there's been a lot of different songs throughout all of quarantine. I feel like they change by the month. So actually, would that be a good bookshelf for me to add to bookshelf? To me to put all the songs on? Because I could do my Spotify playlist, but since it changes so often, like, it wouldn't actually be that accurate for like my on repeat playlist because the things from the beginning of quarantine wouldn't be on there. So you want me to put that on there? That was just a random thought that I had. But it would be a really easy way to categorize some of this. And it would have links to like the Spotify songs. But I would say In Flames by Digital Daggers, Monsters by All Time Low, One of the Drunks by Panic at the Disco, that's been within the last like couple of weeks. 11 Minutes by Halsey and Youngblood has been since like the beginning of the year. Please Don't Go by Joel Adams because of TikTok. Unsteady by X Ambassadors. And then I've been listening to a lot of Danheim. And that might not even be how to pronounce it because I never actually heard that name pronounced. But it's a Danish composer and it's basically like Norse Viking music mixed with like ambient sound. It is so powerful. Like, and you're gonna listen to it and be like, what? I love walking to it at night like a witch going to battle. So yeah, I've been loving that a lot recently. I've been loving it for like the last 6 months, but like the last few days I've just been like playing a lot of their albums on repeat. Favorite color, and do you like your birthstone? My favorite colors in general, because I can't really pick, are any of the jewel tones. So the deep blue, deep purple, deep green, even like garnet, like those deep, rich jewel tones, almost like royal shades, are my favorites. I would say like blue and purple the most, but also green. I don't know, I love all of them. And I don't love my birthstone because August is peridot, I think is how you say it. And this like washed out green, I don't love it. I do love more of the crystals that are associated with Leo because they're more like sunny crystal. Man, I don't like, not my favorite, but like citrine and stuff is like considered like Leo crystals and stuff. So I like those more, but like birthstone wise, don't love it. I love my dad's birthstone. He was born in December, so he has like a sapphire, and my mom has emerald. Like, it's just, it's bullshit. And then like one of my best friends growing up had amethyst because she was February. It was bullshit. Okay, Peridot's my least favorite. What is your favorite slow burn romance ship? Could be from anything, TV, movies, books, games. Oh man. Do Garrus and Shepard count as a slow burn from Mass Effect? Kind of. They're actually more friends to lovers. They're one of my only friends to lovers that I really love. I think my favorite of like all time, the one that has given me the most feels over my life, even though I'm not currently invested in it, is Damon and Elena from the Vampire Diaries. Guys, I was so in the Vampire Diaries fandom if you haven't heard me talk about it before. So yeah, they brought me a lot of feels. I would also say Cook and Effie. That was around the same time I was watching Skins. So yeah, like that era of TV brought me a lot of pain. Oh, also, Pacey and Joey, I would say, is also slow burn. Oh, that's slow from Dawson's Creek. Some of my classics. Would Angel and Buffy be considered slow burn? Like, it's so hard now to be like, what is slow burn actually? Yeah, those are some of my faves. I mean, Darcy and Lizzie from any iteration of Pride and Prejudice. Slow burn. Yeah, those are the classics. I want to start filling my place with plants. What's a good one to start with, i.e. low maintenance? So my recommendation for people that want to get into plants, there's always going to be lists of like 10 plants that are like really low maintenance. However, I didn't even start with those because if you're getting into plants, you gotta get into, in my opinion, you have to pick things that you like the look of. Otherwise it's gonna be like, well, I got this plant because it's easy, but like it's ugly. Like for example, I hate spider plants. I know a lot of people like spider plants. I think they're ugly. I don't like them. They're on every list for low maintenance plants and they're really easy to care for. I don't like the look of them though. So it kind of depends the vibe that you want and then kind of going for the easiest care plants under that category. The standard answer is like a pothos plant because there's a bunch of different types and they're typically pretty easy to care for. Also ZZ plants, but again, ZZ plants have had to grow on me. ZZ plants can like pretty much live in the dark, although I wouldn't recommend it. No plant actually thrives in that situation. But you barely have to water them and they're just like super easy. However, it's taken me a little bit of time to even start liking my ZZ plant, so I wouldn't necessarily go for that. Like I went for plants that I liked the look of them, that were like easy-ish. Peperomia are pretty easy. So yeah, there's a lot of videos for like plant tubers that recommend some plants, but I would go for definitely the one that you like the most, the look of, because then you'll want to take care of it. How did you end up in your current working field? Did you always know you wanted to do this type of work? So as far as ending up in therapy, that's always been my goal, is to be a therapist, like do one-on-one clinical work. That's been my goal from the beginning when I was back in undergrad. So this has always been the end goal, but it's taken a long time because you have to get experience, you have to go to graduate school, you have to get a license, and I have to get one more license before I'm like fully licensed forever. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it, obviously. But yes, I've always known that I wanted to get into it. And as far as getting into like the actual therapy field, it was just a lot of random steps. When you get out of undergrad, there's really not a lot you can do with just a social work and psychology degree. Basically, you can do child welfare or drug and alcohol, and I didn't want to do drug and alcohol, so I ended up in child welfare, but I didn't really want to do that either. Ended up there for a while, then got into medical when I was in grad school because of my history with cancer, and then stayed in medical for a while and got a lot of experience, and then that experience and expertise with cancer patients specifically got me into therapy because it was like, hey, I have all this experience with all these different populations. I have a niche population that I'm really good at and that a lot of people will say I'm good at. I have a lot of references, like I've done really good work over the years. So that's what got me into like therapy itself. So that was my path, but there's like so many paths to get to therapy. What are your future career plans and any plans to get a new place for yourself? I kind of already answered this, but my career path is going to stay with therapy long-term, like forever, hopefully, because it's been my goal forever. Things could change. I'm always like saying that that could happen, but that's been my goal. And then I do plan to get my own place now that I've like started full-time working again. I'm going to get a place closer to both of my offices, but I'm not in any hurry necessarily to do that. Like I am and I'm not, because I don't love living at home, as I've mentioned in various places, but I can save up some money. I don't need to be commuting right now, like I mentioned earlier. I'm fine here, so I kind of want to like find the kind of place that I want, because it'll probably be like an apartment complex, figure out when they have availability, save up some more money, and then when it's like I need to go, or we're opening up the offices again or whatever, then I probably am gonna move. So it's probably gonna be like fall, winter, I'm thinking. It's gonna be before the end of the year, like for sure. I'm not, even for the sake of my bank account, which is not drained, like I had a really good emergency fund, but I want to build that back up before I get my own place again, and I can do that here for like a little while, like a couple months maybe, and then go again. Since you love animals, any plans or thoughts of going vegan, vegetarian? So I'm very plant-based. So I was vegetarian for a long time, and I mostly do still eat vegetarian. I can't even remember the last time that I had meat. And the only meat that I really eat is like fish and occasionally pork. Like beef I will have maybe a couple of times a year. Like, I don't eat a lot of meat. Again, I eat a lot of like seafood, more seafood, but again, not a lot. Like I don't eat meat every day. Vegan I will probably never do just because it's so restrictive, and I do have a history of disordered eating. So restricting any kind of food, I'm kind of like, maybe at some point I could do it. It's slightly harder for me because of some of the eating restrictions I do have as far as like allergies. Like I'm allergic to a lot of nuts, which is in a lot of like vegan replacements, vegan milks, things like that. It's not impossible, there's other alternatives, but it just makes it slightly harder. I'm allergic to a type of grain that I'm forgetting right now that people say a lot for protein, and I'm forgetting it. So yeah, it wouldn't be impossible, but just the level of restriction there is a little dicey when it's only been a couple of years since I've gotten out of my disordered eating habits. So, but I tend to do mostly like vegetarian diet anyway. And the last question was, how often should one declutter their bookshelves in general? And there's really no like across the board answer for that. Like I I couldn't tell you, because it really depends on the person. Like, some people love having large collections and some don't. So I have gotten in a habit of just like, if I know I don't want to keep a book, or if it was just like meh, I don't feel one way or the other a ton, I just put it in a getting rid of pile at this point. So like, I'm maintaining my orderliness of my bookshelves constantly, instead of doing like these big unhauls, at least for right now. Like, that's worked really well for me thus far. What's a good place to buy plants online? I have bought from a few. I've bought from Steve's Leaves, I bought from Pistol's Nursery, I've tried to buy from Gabriella Plants, but they sell out immediately. Like, they restock and sell out pretty much immediately. And there's one more I can like see, Logie's. Logee. So those are the like 4 that I would recommend that I have purchased from, or that I've seen other plant people purchase from. I purchased myself from Steve's Leaves and Pistols, but a lot of times you have to get on wait lists for things, and they'll let you know when they get stocked. And at least with Pistols and Steve's Leaves, it's a quick selling out of things, but like, you could have like a couple of hours instead of like you have to be on there immediately. Have you always dabbled in romance, or is that a newer genre for you? If you guys are longtime viewers, it's new. This time last year, I think, is when I started getting into romance, dipping my toe in. Very odd for me. I was not into it at all. And I'm actually gonna do a video about that soonish. Do you know any good book clubs to join for young adults? If you're talking about in person, I would look at your local library and meetup groups, because there tends to be like young adult book clubs there locally. How did you figure out what to do with your life? This is a funny question, because I don't think anyone ever truly does. That's the thing, like, people always say, and when you're younger, you're like, shut up, but it's true. Like, the older you get, the more you realize, like, no one has anything figured out ever, and like, you never actually grow up. So I always knew what career I wanted. I always knew it was gonna be like psychology based, but if you would have told me in undergrad that I would have been doing what I'm doing, and like the focus that I have as far as like starting in foster care, doing like teen crisis stuff, and doing oncology in a hospice, inpatient hospice, I would have been like, no, not me, wrong bitch. But here I am. So like, I feel like a lot of people get like a vague idea of what they want to do, but even so, like, I have so many friends that like thought they want to do one thing, and then like life led them a different way, and they're doing something that they love way more. So I don't think you ever quite figure it out. I think it's a lot about, like, as woo-woo as it sounds, like, you gotta kind of live in the moment and go with the flow, and like, things are gonna happen, and life's gonna lead you like where you need to be ultimately, if you don't fight it too much, and like trust your intuition on what makes you happy. I know it's like so vague and so like, but like, it is true. What are some of your favorite books from childhood? And they said that I might have answered this in the past Q&A. I think that I have, but I know there's more of you that like don't go back and watch all my videos. I'm just one of those kids that like checked a lot of books from the library, so I don't remember like all of my favorites from when I was like little. Like, I read the American Girl doll books. Samantha was obviously my favorite, but I don't remember reading like a ton of series, because I've mentioned before that I didn't like read Harry Potter growing up. The first series that I remember reading as a teen that like stuck with me was the Abhorsen series by Garth Nix, which I want to reread soon. I always say that. But yeah, I was always just like checking books up from the library, but none of them, like, besides the American Girl doll books, really stick with me as being like favorite books from childhood. Your dream concert. 5 artists, alive or dead, what's the lineup? So basically, like, my dream concert would be like 2007, 2006 Warped Tour. But if I'm going with like, they don't all necessarily make sense, like they're not all one category of band, I would say Paris, Digital Daggers, Panic at the Disco, probably Fall Out Boy. Like, I can't get away from like the Honda Civic tour of like 2006. 2005, whenever that was. And then I think XYLO. How do you stay motivated to read 5+ books monthly? I am able to do it now because of like quarantine, working from home, whatever. But as you guys know, like when I was working inpatient hospice last year, I was reading like 2 or 3 books a month. So motivated to read in general, a lot of it is motivated by content, not because I feel compelled to make content and I feel like pressured to make content just for content's sake, or for even like your guys' sake, but like I do want to talk to people about books. So to talk to people about books, you have to read books. And to not like repeat the same topics and talk about the same books all the time, you have to read new books. So like that's honestly like the biggest motivation for me at this point, is like I gotta read like at least 4, really, hopefully, is like my ideal, because then I have 1 review a week, blah blah blah. So then I can have new stuff to talk about with people, because this is part of my big social outlet, especially right now. It has been for a while, but especially under current circumstances, talking to you guys about books is like what's keeping me going. Which book do you always reread when you want to feel good? The Night Circus. Although I haven't reread it in a while. I usually re-listen to it on audiobook. Who are some of your favorite non-booktube YouTubers? Tiffany Ferg, she does like deep dives into like internet culture stuff. Smoky Glow, she does a combination of makeup and then like talking about stuff that's happening with like influencers. I wouldn't say she's a drama channel. She's like a commentary channel. Love her. She's also a fellow social worker. I watch a lot of plant tubers. So Kaylee Ellen, Nick Pileggi, and then I watch a lot of like these days I watch a lot of like witchy woo-woo YouTubers. Like a lot. But I talk about that more on my other channel, which is linked down below. Is this gonna be like a 40-minute video? Probably. Have you ever gifted a book to someone who isn't a reader? No. I don't. I really only buy books for people that I know they're gonna like. I typically only buy books for people off their wish list because I know myself as even a reader, if someone would just give me like a random book and be like, you read, you might like this, I'd be like, please don't do that because not every reader reads the same things. So I don't tend to try to like talk people into reading or anything like that. Tips on keeping cats or pets away from plants. It's a battle sometimes, but my dog doesn't bother them like at all. Like dogs don't tend to. Some dogs do, I guess, but dogs don't tend to. Cats, it's really like just keeping it up and away from them. So like right now I can kind of have plants wherever because the dog is the only one here. When I get the cats back and move to my own place again, I'm gonna be doing a lot of putting them on shelves, like way up where they can't jump to them, and hanging them, honestly, from various things. I have heard that you can train them, but my one cat Kit is like, she wants all plants to die. Like she wants to just shred them and destroy them. Even fake plants she goes for, like she hates them. So I don't think I could ever train her out of it. Like Banks I probably could, but like she never will. And then if he sees her, he'll be like, oh, it's free game. So like I would just keep them away from them. And then if they can get to some of them, I'd keep the ones that are non-toxic, like in a place that's like, oh, well, they might be able to get to them, but if they do, they're not gonna die. Best historical fiction you've ever read. Probably The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I think would be probably my favorite. Okay, and finally we go to Twitter. Favorite part of your new job? I know you guys are having like a lot of questions variously about my new job. I think my favorite part about it is, well, one, it's what I've always wanted to do. Two, I have a lot of control over it because although I'm working like in a group practice and I technically have a boss, it's not a boss in like a traditional company kind of sense. So she's more of like a support person to all of us, and like we do our own thing, we take care of our own schedule, we schedule our own clients, like we choose who we get. So if there's somebody that's in intake and they're like, hey, can you handle this for, like we got a referral for somebody who's in really intensive drug and alcohol treatment, and they're like, Sam, can you do this? And I was like, it's outside of my scope. Like I can do that when that's a secondary problem, but if that's the main thing someone's focusing on, that's outside of my scope of practice, and I wouldn't feel like I had the tools to really help them. And there's just not a lot of like bullshit. Like it's not like working for a big company where like there's all this like really just dumb procedures and rules coming down for people who don't know how to do your job, but they're telling you how to do your job and you're like, you've never done my job? That's one of the most annoying things about working, like in general. Like I don't necessarily want to be my own boss ever because I don't want to be the big boss, but like don't tell me how to do my job if you've never done it. Really grinds my gears. Not having to sit through dumb meetings and things, like all we have really are like trainings and like supervision where we like do community support for each other, and like that's it. So yeah, it's a lot of like really good meaningful learning and not just crap. Like it's good trainings and she brings in experts and like she really wants us to learn and she pays for additional education and like it's awesome. And yeah, there's just a lot of control over like what we want to deal with. So there's not situations where people are coming in like that are mandated to be there, which is something that a lot of people do. And I used to work with a lot of like mandated people, but I don't love that because it really is hard to create a helping relationship in that case. So this is all people who are like seeking out treatment. We can create a team approach, you know, me and the client, like getting them to where they want to be. Like all of that fills my cup, it fills their cup. Like it's great. It's a great dynamic where I'm not feeling like constantly drained. Is it still a draining job? Yes, but it's not draining me in like toxic ways, you know? It's like a good drain for now. Can you recommend any good sci-fi books that are kind of weird? I would just recommend the new weird genre. I haven't read a lot of it, but Jeff Vandermeer does it. Also, Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer is really weird. I did a review for it, so I'll link that on the screen. But this is like a very weird sci-fi book as well. What's a TV show or movie that you wish could have been a book instead? I don't really have that happen to me. I tend to like if I like something, I tend to like it in that medium because obviously translating it into like a book wouldn't necessarily work. So I've never, I don't think I've ever watched something and been like, ooh, I wish this was a book instead. It's sometimes the other way around, like, oh, I think this would have made a really good TV show or movie, but never really the other way around. What is a typical day on the job like in social work? That is like an impossible to answer question because there are so many different fields of social work. I think people, I'm not saying that you do, but a lot of people just like assume social work is one type of thing. Like people think social worker and think like child welfare. And while that is like one of the fields you can be in, like social workers can be present in basically any setting having to do with people. So yes, we do work in child welfare and like drug and alcohol prisons, housing, hospitals, like every hospital, every doctor's office. There are some being more present in like veterinary clinics, schools, therapists, obviously, any kind of like community outreach type thing, advocacy, nonprofits, politics, like there are social workers everywhere. So yeah, it's really hard to say for any one career because my days were so different when I was doing child welfare to crisis counseling for teens to oncology to hospice to what I'm doing now. So if it's a job where people are more in the field, then they might have like a few days where they're at an office to do like meetings or to do paperwork, but then like 3 days out of the week they're at people's homes or going out to schools for visits or doing therapy in people's homes or things like that. Working in medical settings is a lot more structured, so it's a lot more like meetings and things in the morning with doctors and nurses and stuff, and then usually like visits with patients or families or helping people with documentation or doing one-on-one therapy or doing support groups. A lot of these jobs you're on call, so for a week, usually, sometimes it's a day, but like usually with social work it's like a week, you're on call 24/7, so you can be called at any time to a crisis. My current job doesn't have a lot of that, like I mentioned, so my current schedule, if you're curious about like therapy and stuff, I have a few days a week, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, where I have like supervision, so we do kind of like training and stuff, and then a few times a month we also have different kinds of trainings, but then the majority of my day from like 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock at night, because I chose to do evening shifts because that's when most people are off work and stuff, is when I'm having therapy sessions, and they're 50 minutes at a time, and then I have 10 minutes between to kind of like decompress, process, do my notes for that session, and then go into the next session. So that's what like a therapy day might look like. What got you started reading SFF books, and how old were you then, and what were your first favorites? So I kind of talked about not really knowing what my first favorites were, but I've basically read science fiction and fantasy like my whole life. Like I've always read fantastical things, fantasy-based things. Again, I couldn't tell you, besides like the Abhorsen series, like what I read as a kid, but it was always fantastical things. Oh, I loved Redwall as a kid, so that's talking about favorite books. I loved the Redwall series as a kid, but that's like fantasy animals fighting and stuff, so that was really fun and great. But yeah, I always got into it, and I think it's just because like that's the kind of stories I really like. As basic as it is, like I like fantastical stuff. I like that kind of like escape. I don't really love just very real world things. I'm a Leo sun, Sagittarius moon, Aquarius rising. I like the drama and the things that I consume like media wise. I like the big show. Someone asked how I'm doing, and I'm doing well. Like, yes, this whole year has been a shit show for like everyone, but it's really given me some time to like work on my own like mental health and a lot of internal stuff that I wouldn't have had the time for any other time. So is it a silver lining? No. Would I want to just trade it for something else? Yes, but that is a good thing that came out of this time. Favorite Schitt's Creek character slash season? I have not finished the show because I stopped in like mid-season 4 because I'm like, this is one of the only things that brings me joy and I don't want to be done with it. So I like stopped watching it. I'm gonna get back to it, but I'm just like, no, it makes me happy. I would think, it's like a three-way tie between like David, Moira, and Alexis. I love them all. I know you're supposed to. I think David's probably like my most favorite, but that's hard because Alexis gets so good in like the second season and beyond, and Moira is just like, they're all great, they're all really good, and like I like a lot of the side characters, but like the Roses are like, you know, my favorite, like the kids and mom, top notch. Top 5 favorite shows, I'm assuming you mean of all time, so that would be Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dawson's Creek, Grey's Anatomy, probably The Vampire Diaries, even though I haven't finished it. And I would say Game of Thrones, but as we know, you know, like everything got ruined. So maybe True Blood, but I didn't finish that either. Those are my two vampire shows, besides Buffy, I never finished. So can I say that they're my favorite of all time? And then like Schitt's Creek is up there, but I haven't finished that. Like I do a lot of like pushing off of things because like they bring me happiness and I don't want them to end. And then like time passes and I don't even want to finish them at that point. So, how are your plants doing, and do you have any new ones? Yes, I have 3 new ones. I just recently-ish did I've gotten like 5 plants, 6 plants since then, but I did a plant tour on my other channel, which again is linked down below, and I will be doing plant updates and like plant tours there. So if you like my plant content, then check that out for sure. What are your thoughts on the new Emma adaptation, if you've seen it? It's wonderful. I asked for it for my birthday. I don't know if I got it. I will know as of today. It brings me happiness. I watched it like back to back when I rented it when it was available on like on demand. It brings me like a similar joy to the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with like more laughs. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the angst. I love a lot. Do you have any book recommendations with a similar vibe as Anastasia? Not really. There is a book that I've read, Heart of Iron. I think it's by Ashley Poston, I want to say. And that is actually like an Anastasia retelling in like space, like it's a sci-fi one. Recommendations for new adult fantasy books with a good romance. I think I've done a video on this. If I haven't, then I will. But if I have done a video, I will link it. But this is like a whole video topic. Dream vacation destination / activities. Oh man, putting the phone down because I have so many. I basically want to go everywhere. In the United States, I really want to go to New Orleans around Halloween, but I also want to go to Salem. Maybe not around Halloween though, actually, because I think Salem would be more fun in the off season. I want to go to a lot of national parks and do like hikes and stuff through there. Not like through hikes, like just day hikes. I really want to go to the Pacific Northwest, like Seattle and like Portland and things like that, and Sequoia National Forest. So like that's the United States like top. I also really want to go to Quebec. I really want to go to Ireland, Dublin, like the whole thing. I would love to just like immerse myself in Ireland for like a month. Also Scotland, like that area is like where my like ancestors are from, because again, white girl. So I really want to go there. I also really want to go to Germany and go to the Black Forest specifically because I just want to live there and just get absorbed into the trees. I feel like that would happen in the Black Forest because it's a fairy tale forest. I want to go back to Rome because I've been to Rome, but I was only there for a few days, so I want to go back. Kind of want to go to Paris, but like I'm not super pressed about it. Really want to go to Moscow. Egypt has been on my list like forever because I was like obsessed with Egypt as a kid. I want to go to Japan. I want to go to so many things, and like some of these I know I'm never gonna do. Like I'm probably never, unless I meet someone that's like a really big travel enthusiast as well, like meet a partner who will like do the things with me. Like yes, I can travel alone. However, I actually do get more enjoyment, generally speaking, traveling with others and like sharing that experience with somebody else. So I need like a partner in travel crime, and I don't have that. But basically I would go anywhere. Australia, New Zealand, I really want to go to Lord of the Rings like set. The Philippines, Thailand, everywhere. I want to go everywhere. I want to go so many places, and I probably never will. I want to go to the Amazon rainforest before it gets destroyed, but I don't want to see the big bugs and get all the vaccines. I want to go lots of places. One author you would want to write a Hades and Persephone retelling, absolutely Madeline Miller, and I think there's a good chance she will, or at least write like a Persephone story. So I'm holding out hope because that one's a possibility. What are your top 5 guilty pleasures? I don't consider things guilty pleasures. The Snark Squad pod coined the term trash pocket, things that are in your trash pocket. But I have a lot of things that are in my trash pocket. I like some like trash pocket movies and stuff that are just like bad, and I like them. Same thing is true for like TV. There's nothing that I consider a guilty pleasure. Like I never eat anything and be like, oh my god, this is my guilty pleasure. I never like, there's nothing that I do that I feel guilty about. If it makes me feel good and it's not harming anyone else, I don't feel guilty about it. And I don't really do things that make other people feel bad or that cause harm to other people because that would make me feel bad because I'm not like much of an empath. So yeah, I don't have them, which I know is like one of those like, oh stop, but like I don't. I feel like most people by a certain age, I don't want to be like ageist because, you know, however, I do feel like by a certain age, like you almost grow out of guilty pleasures because you're like, fuck that. I don't want to feel guilty about ever being happy. Do you speak any other languages? No. I took Spanish in high school, have forgotten like a lot of it. I could probably read some of it, and I understand some when I hear people speak it, but not enough to like really know what they're saying. And I took like a couple years of French as well, and that's like totally gone. Like I have no recollection. I'm pretty bad at languages, actually. They just don't absorb my brain, and I wish desperately that they did. Can you recommend some adult fantasy books that are not a million pages long and hard to follow? I'm pretty sure I've done a video on like beginner getting into science fiction and fantasy, and a lot of my recommendations were that kind of like not super dense stuff, so I'll link that on the screen. Have you read any books that would fall under cottagecore? I would say that Uprooted is like the most cottagecore thing, just because she's like a nature witch and like just like is one with the forest and stuff, so I definitely feel like this is cottagecore. It's just the vibe, but The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender, especially with like the history of the family, because it follows all 3 women throughout their lives, like family women, like generational stuff, and they're magical. I would say that is cottagecore. Also Wild Beauty by Anna Marie McLemore, I would also say is cottagecore. Most of their books are cottagecore. What have been some of your best, worst reading experiences, and what has made them so memorable? I think my best reading experiences are all my favorite books, and my worst reading experiences are all my least favorite books. So like Beautiful Disaster and The Bronze Horseman and things that I like continually bitch about. Worst reading experiences made me so upset. I hate them. Bleh. And then my best is just like, the thing with best books and like the books that give you the most impact, a lot of it is like reading it at the right time, when you're in the right mood, when you're in the right headspace, and it's just for you in that moment. So that would be like all of my favorite books were just read at the right time. Are you into witchy things, or is it more just an aesthetic of it? If you are, what got you started? I am into witchy things. If you made it this long, you get the secret that I'm into woo-woo witchy stuff if you haven't picked it up from like all of my social media platforms. I've only gotten recently into it in the last like year-ish, last like even 6 months more heavily into it. I have a whole video on my other channel, which is again linked down below. If you're into plants and witchy stuff, it's gonna be on that channel. But I have a whole video on there talking about like my witchy evolution. I don't claim myself as a witch, I say more of like a seeker. I'm agnostic. I give my whole background on like religion and how I was raised and what drew me to more of like the witchy woo-woo stuff and what kind of stuff about it I'm into and what my beliefs are about it. So if you're interested in that, check that out. And then the last question is top 5 favorite movies. Ooh man, it's hard to pick like favorite movies of all time. There's a lot of movies that I've watched a lot over the years, and I don't know if those are favorites or just like baked into my nostalgia at this point. Definitely my favorite movie of all time is the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. I can watch it over and over on repeat, and I have. I would say this is one that I'm not sure if it's a favorite or it's just baked into my nostalgia, but probably Titanic. I'm sorry, is this changing your image of me based on these like really like romance heavy movies? I don't know, but like my mom watched that over and over and over again when I was younger, and to this day, like she just watched it the other day. Just be sitting in the house and from the distance we'll hear the Titanic soundtrack playing. Like it's just a constant part of my life, so that now like when I hear the soundtrack, like I get calm because it's like, oh, I'm at home. Like it's beyond. The original Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, gives me happy feelings. There's a Keira Knightley trend here. Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, I think I would say Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Ooh man, I don't know. Then we have like the rom-coms that all kind of like fall in the same, like I love You've Got Mail a lot. When Harry Met Sally, although I think You've Got Mail is slightly more, and The Holiday. I think When You've Got Mail and The Holiday are like tied, because The Holiday is what I'm gonna watch more if I want a rom-com around the holidays, and You've Got Mail is like every other time of year, but also around the holidays because there's a lot of holiday scenes. So yeah, those are my favorites. And that is it. This video is probably very, very long. I'm sorry. But as I mentioned, check down below for links to my other channel where other content is besides book stuff, and then also for Bookshelf where you can follow me and you can get more information about some of my interests in things that might not always be answered except for on like Q&As, which only happen like maybe a few times a year. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.